The moment they cleared Eden Prime's orbital checkpoint, Lyall let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. He steered the Wayfarer's Fortune through a small corridor in the local traffic, mindful of the watchers who might lurk on outposts or satellites. A single alarm from the planetary authorities, or a single suspicious scan, could bring their escape to an abrupt end. Within the cockpit, the tension was palpable. Becca's eyes remained fixed on the swirling vacuum beyond the viewport. Her delicate fingers curled around the arms of the co-pilot's chair. Lyall could feel like a subtle ghost of his own anxiety that she was wound tight with fear and anticipation. Strangely, the more he sensed her unease, the more he was aware of his own resolve to protect them both. "Coordinates set for the Raka system," Lyall murmured, tapping controls. "We'll try to hide out there for a short while. Maybe get some leads from a contact of mine who deals in exotic medicines." Becca nodded, though her gaze remained distant. "I only hope your contact is discreet. If word spreads of our condition, we could have no peace at all." Lyall was about to respond when an urgent bleep from the console cut him short. His instruments detected an energy spike behind them, another ship, powered by engines that glowed with an ominous signature. He quickly ran a scan, and his readouts showed a small cruiser bearing no official identification, running a series of active scans on the Wayfarer's Fortune. "We've got company," Lyall said, his heart leaping. "They must have tracked us from the surface. I'll push the engines, brace yourself." The hum beneath their seats intensified as Lyall redirected power to the thrusters, aiming for the edge of Eden Prime's gravity well, where they could engage faster than light travel. The unmarked vessel accelerated in pursuit, matching their course. A crackle of radio static preceded a curt transmission. "Wayfarer's Fortune. Power down immediately or be fired upon. We are authorized to detain your ship and cargo." Lyall recognized that tone, the calm arrogance of a private enforcer, rather than any official policing body. Whoever they were, they meant business. Instead of complying, he initiated evasive maneuvers, jinking the small freighter from side to side to spoil any targeting lock. A sudden blaze of light erupted behind them as the pursuer fired a warning shot across their bow, forcing Lyall to swerve sharply. Gritting his teeth, he tried to reroute auxiliary power to the shield generator. The Wayfarer's Fortune, not built for combat, groaned under the strain. Becca clasped the edge of the console. "They will not give up easily," she said, her voice trembling. "If they board us, they won't," Lyall promised, though he had no real plan except to run. "Hold tight." He angled the ship toward a slingshot trajectory around one of Eden Prime's moons, hoping to gain enough momentum to fling them out of local space. The cockpit rattled, and lights flickered as another volley of energy fire grazed their shields. Warning klaxons blared. Becca shut her eyes, and Lyall felt a sudden calm flow through him, a sense of focus that was not entirely his own. He did not question it. He simply seized the clarity to fine-tune his maneuvering, weaving the freighter through the silent vacuum like a wraith. The pursuer persisted, but Lyall's bold gambit around the moon's gravitational field gave them a marginal lead. The moment they escaped the worst of the planet's interference, he activated the hyperdrive. With a deafening roar and a flare of azure light, the Wayfarer's Fortune vanished into the realm of faster-than-light travel, leaving Eden Prime's local patrols and the skulking bounty hunters behind for now. In the cockpit, only the droning hum of the engines broke the silence. Lyall slumped back in his seat, exhaling in relief, while Becca's gaze flicked to him, a ghost of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with the adrenaline of their narrow escape. Lyall rubbed his temples. The faint psychic connection still dancing at the edges of his awareness. "We're not safe yet," he murmured. "If they followed us once, they can track us again. How can they find us in hyperspace?" Becca asked. Her brow furrowed. "They might have planted a tracer on the hull," Lyall responded grimly. "Or they may have contacts in the next system who know my ship's signature. We'll have to be on guard." Becca folded her arms, turning inward. He sensed her worry mingling with a steely resolve. "This is my fault," she said softly. "You have been caught up in my escape." Lyall waved off the apology, though part of him couldn't deny a hint of resentment that flickered beneath his outward bravado. "I chose to pick up that vial, and I drank it willingly. No sense in assigning blame now. Let's just figure out our next move." Becca nodded in gratitude. "Then let us plan." For a time, they discussed options: traveling to remote worlds, seeking out rumored alchemists who might know about the Urana Nebula and the bonding serum, or contacting old acquaintances. As the hours stretched, Lyall realized that no plan would be easy or safe. The notion of a permanent bond weighed heavily on them both, an unspoken tension that hovered in the air. Finally, exhausted from the day's harrowing events, they decided to rest. Lyall programmed the autopilot to carry them through hyperspace, then led Becca to the ship's modest living quarters. There were 2 bunks cramped into the space, separated by a thin partition. He gestured for her to take one, while he half collapsed onto the other. His mind churned with questions, but sleep beckoned. Before he drifted off, he felt a curious warmth in his head, an impression of compassion that was not his alone. Through the bond, Becca seemed to convey a gentle reassurance, as though saying, "We'll get through this together." With that, Lyall sank into an uneasy slumber. 3 days passed in the timeless haze of faster-than-light travel. During that period, Lyall and Becca conversed in cautious increments, each testing the boundaries of their bond. He learned that her people, once a thriving race, had been decimated by a catastrophic event, the nature of which she did not fully understand. Rumors suggested a malevolent warlord had engineered the destruction, coveting the unique traits of her species. Now, she believed herself to be among the last, if not the very last, of her kind, with certain genetic capabilities that unscrupulous buyers would pay fortunes to harness. Lyall thought in turn, shared tales from his roguish adventures. Although he omitted certain unsavory details, he was not sure how much to trust Becca with the darker side of his dealings. But the bond made it difficult to conceal his emotions entirely. On a few occasions, she gently teased him about truths he tried to gloss over, sensing unspoken feelings beneath his words. Each time, he offered a sheepish grin, uncertain whether to marvel or bristle at their inescapable link. When the Wayfarer's fortune finally dropped out of hyperspace near the Raka system, Lyall guided it toward a sprawling station orbiting a greenish gas giant. The station, known as Port Sundrift, was a bustling hub of commerce and clandestine trade. Here, one could purchase nearly any commodity, legal or otherwise. It was also rife with rumors, and Lyall had reason to believe a certain old contact might still frequent the place. "Just stay close," Lyall said as they docked. "We'll keep a low profile. See if I can find a lead on breaking this bond." Becca pulled a hooded shawl over her head, her jade skin partly obscured. "Are you certain we can trust this contact of yours?" "Let's say we can trust him not to kill us outright," Lyall replied dryly. "I once sold him a crate of specialized stasis injectors that earned him a tidy profit. He owes me a favor." Together, they descended the ship's ramp into the station's docking bay. The air was tinged with the acrid scent of burnt fuel and metal polish. Port Sundrift's corridors bustled with a motley crowd: reptilian traders, humanoid mercenaries, mechanical drones hauling crates. and the occasional aristocrat slumming it for exotic wares. Neon signs flashed overhead, advertising everything from bionic implants to curious amusements. Lyall led Becca through twisting passages, navigating by memory until they reached a nondescript doorway with a flickering sign. Inside, an establishment known as the Gilded Moth beckoned. It was a lounge of sorts, thick with swirling smoke and low-lit booths where patrons brokered deals in hushed tones. Music drifted from hidden speakers, throbbing in time with the conversation. Scanning the crowd, Lyall spotted a tall, lanky figure with a mechanical eye, nursing a drink in a corner booth. The man looked up, and a crooked grin split his face. "Well, if it isn't my old friend, Lyall the Wanderer," his synthetic eye whirred, adjusting focus. "Been a spell since you darkened these halls." "Gareth," Lyall greeted, returning a guarded smile. "Mind if we sit?" Gareth gestured, and they settled into the booth. Becca remained partially hidden beneath her hood, but Lyall sensed her apprehension. Through a fleeting pulse of the bond, he sensed Gareth's curiosity sharpen as he took in the sight of Lyall's companion. "You've brought a friend," Gareth observed, leaning back. "And from the looks of it, you two are in a bit of trouble." "You have no idea," Lyall muttered. "I need information. There's a bonding serum from the Orana Nebula, the kind rumored to be unbreakable. Ever heard of it?" Gareth's mechanical eye flickered. "Perhaps. Rumors abound. Exotic potions. Permanent links. They fetch a high price on certain markets." "Why do you ask?" "Don't tell me you've," he halted, noting the grim expressions. "Ha! You actually drank it, didn't you?" Lyall grimaced, while Becca averted her gaze. "We're looking for any lead on someone who can reverse or disrupt such a bond, or at least protect us from those who might want to exploit it." Gareth pursed his lips, tapping the table. "That's not exactly easy. The Orana Nebula's flora is rare. The serum itself is rumored to be meticulously crafted by certain alchemists. Not many in this part of the galaxy dabble in that. However," he paused, eyeing Lyall, "there might be an eccentric exobiologist on Aurelos, a watery planet a few jumps from here. Goes by the name Davruel. People say he's studied all manner of biotech. Maybe he'd know something, if he hasn't gone completely mad by now." Lyall glanced at Becca, feeling a tiny flicker of hope. "How do we find him?" Gareth shrugged. "That's the rub. Aurelos is controlled by the Galani Syndicate nasty bunch. They traffic in rare species, experimental augments, all that lovely stuff. Davruel's there at their behest, apparently. Some say he's a captive researcher, forced to concoct questionable formulas. Others claim he's gone into business with them willingly, trading knowledge for protection. Either way, if he can't help you, I doubt anyone can." A silence settled over the booth. Becca's fingers clenched in her lap, and Lyall felt her trepidation warring with renewed determination. The Galani Syndicate might well be the same group that was hunting her. But if this Davruel had knowledge of the serum, it might be their only shot. Finally, Lyall spoke. "All right, we'll make for Aurelos, but I need more than that. We've got to slip in without alerting the Syndicate. They're already on our tail," Gareth scoffed. "You want discreet infiltration on a planet locked down by a crime lord. That'll cost you. I might be able to wrangle an entry code that'll let you pose as cargo haulers, but I expect compensation." "Old friend," Lyall frowned, tapping the table in thought. "I can offer you a stake in any salvage I come across. I've got a lead on some old war relics in the Tamara sector." He caught Becca's gaze, reading her silent question. He cleared his throat. "But let's just say there are valuable trinkets if we come out of this alive." Gareth considered, then extended his hand. Deal. I'll prep the code. Meanwhile, watch yourselves. Syndicate scouts lurk even here, and your predicament will fetch a pretty bounty if the right ears catch wind. With the arrangement struck, Gareth rose to leave. Lyall held him back a moment. One more thing. Have you heard anything about a green-skinned species that was nearly wiped out? Possibly from a star system that was destroyed by war. Gareth paused, glancing again at Becca. Only whispers. Some say a few survivors might exist, hidden away. The Gilani Syndicate has been scouring the frontier for them, for reasons unknown. If your friend here is one of them, you'd best keep her under wraps. There are those who'd pay fortunes for a specimen, or use her as leverage in their twisted power games. With that ominous note, he vanished into the smoky shadows. Lyall turned to Becca, who let her hood fall back slightly. Her features were tense with worry. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Every time we search for help, we only plunge into greater danger. We're in this together now," Lyall replied, covering her hand with his. He felt a subtle warmth that might have been her gratitude resonating in his own mind. "Let's get that code and get off station. The longer we stay, the riskier it becomes," Becca agreed, and they discreetly made their way back to the docking bay. True to his word, Gareth sent a coded message that included a forged manifest suitable for entry to Aurelos. Lyall wasted no time, launching the Wayfarer's fortune back into the starry expanse. Yet as they left Port Sundrift's proximity, Becca stiffened, an icy jolt of alarm coursing through her and by extension, through Lyall. He checked the scanners and saw what caused her fear. A black and silver ship lurking on the station's fringe, scanning vessels. The same signature from Eden Prime, the same pursuers. "They must have a tracer on us," Becca muttered, voicing Lyall's own dread. "We can't keep outrunning them forever." Lyall gritted his teeth, pushing the engine power. "We just need to reach Aurelos in one piece. After that, well, one crisis at a time." He punched in the hyperspace coordinates, and with a final roar of thrusters, the Wayfarer's fortune slipped into faster-than-light transit once more, leaving the menacing shadow behind, at least temporarily. But Lyall knew that each jump brought them closer to the heart of Syndicate territory, where cunning and cruelty reigned. He could only hope that Davrul's rumored knowledge would grant them a chance to sever the bond, or at least escape the Syndicate's grasp. Little did they realize that in seeking such knowledge, they would awaken forces even more dangerous. For the Gilani Syndicate, with its labyrinthine web of interests and alliances, had been pursuing the secrets of Becca's species for far longer than she knew, and their thirst for the binding serum, intertwined with her genetic heritage, was far from sated. Like a glimmering pearl set adrift in space, Aurelos shone with an otherworldly luminescence. Its surface was composed largely of sprawling seas, tinted a deep blue-green, with scattered archipelagos forming pockets of civilization. Towering spires and domes rose from artificial platforms, connected by causeways and flanked by luminous algae that pulsed in bioluminescent hues beneath the waters. Lyall and Becca observed the planet from orbit, their ship's sensors picking up signals from security satellites and patrolling Syndicate vessels. The Gilani Syndicate's presence was unmistakable, their marks stamped on traffic beacons and communications frequencies. Officially, Aurelos still maintained an appearance of free trade, but in truth, the Syndicate's grip ran deep, controlling commerce and political influence behind the scenes. Guided by Gareth's forged manifest, Lyall broadcast a request to dock at a mid-level platform, known as Zirion Quay. After a tense pause, the flight controller responded with an automated permission code, directing them toward a specific docking bay. Lyall exhaled, relieved that the ruse had worked for now. As they descended through the planet's atmosphere, the Wayfarer's fortune skimmed over rolling waves that sparkled with flecks of green luminescence. Leaning forward in the pilot's seat, Lyall admired the sight, while Becca gazed with quiet awe. "It's surprisingly beautiful," she murmured, though the threat that awaited them below weighed heavy in her voice. "We'll keep a low profile," Lyall reminded her. "We stick to the story that we're here to deliver specialized supplies. We'll ask around for Davruel, but carefully. One misstep could put us on the syndicate's radar." When they touched down on the platform, the docking procedures were handled by board attendants who barely spared them a glance. Lyall slipped them a small bribe to expedite matters, and soon, he and Becca found themselves stepping onto a polished Durasteel concourse. Windows offered views of the aquatic expanse, while the architecture blended sleek, futuristic lines with a hint of the oceanic motif. They wandered past shops selling pearls, aquatic spices, and curious marine life. The city bustled, with a mix of natives and off-worlders going about their day. A hush occasionally fell when heavily armed syndicate enforcers strode by in formation, their presence an unspoken reminder of who truly ruled. Lyall guided Becca to a modest tavern known as the Sunken Lantern, recommended by the docking attendants as a place where new arrivals might find local contacts. Inside, pastel lanterns cast an underwater glow, and a subtle trickle of water flowed through channels along the walls, giving the space a calming ambiance. Still, Lyall couldn't shake the tension coiling in his gut. Approaching the bar, he asked the proprietor, an elderly amphibian with translucent skin, if he knew of a certain exobiologist named Davruel. The amphibian's bulbous eyes flickered with recognition, but he lowered his voice to a conspiratorial hush. "A dangerous inquiry," he croaked. "The syndicate keeps him in a lab near the ocean floor. If rumors hold, access is restricted. Only those with special clearance can descend that far. Best not to ask questions." Lyall traded a few credits for further details, gleaning that a private elevator led from a secure tower down to an underwater complex where Davruel was said to work. The entrance was guarded by syndicate loyalists. Brute force would be suicidal. Cunning was their only chance. Becca's face was pallid beneath her hood. "Even if we managed to find him," she whispered, "how do we persuade him to help us?" "If he's under syndicate control," Lyall grimaced, leaning closer, "we'll appeal to his curiosity. Scientists can be mercenary. But if he's forced to work here, he might be looking for a way out. Our bond might be a puzzle intriguing enough for him. Or perhaps we can offer him something else." Their conversation was cut short by the entrance of two syndicate enforcers who strode into the tavern. Scanning the patrons with hawkish eyes, Lyall froze, feeling Becca's alarm spike through the bond. Quickly, they turned aside, pretending to focus on their drinks, hearts pounding as the enforcers surveyed the crowd. Moments later, the armed men departed. Only then did Lyall and Becca dare to exhale. The amphibian proprietor shuffled closer. "You see, they are always watching." Lyall offered a nod of thanks and a few extra credits for the warning. Then, taking Becca by the hand, he slipped out of the tavern via a side door, determined to forge a path toward Davruel's hidden lab. Under the fading evening light, they skirted the edges of Zirion Quay, careful to avoid main thoroughfares patrolled by syndicate drones. Eventually, they reached the tower that housed the rumored elevator, a cylindrical structure rising from the watery depths, crowned with antennae and blinking lights. Drawing a small device from his pouch, Lyall fiddled with a stolen passkey that Gareth had provided. He hoped it would grant them access. The tower's entrance was guarded by two heavily armed sentries, their expressions grim beneath polished helmets. A sleek, mechanical gate barred the way. Hiding behind a stack of cargo crates, Lyall considered their options. Storming in was out of the question. Slipping by unseen was also risky. He glanced at Becca. "I have an idea," he whispered. "It's dangerous, but it might work." She swallowed, sensing his nervous energy. "Tell me. I'll distract them. Draw them away if I can. You slip inside the tower. Use the passkey to reach the elevator. I'll circle back and follow once the coast is clear. We'll meet at the lab level if we get separated." Fear flickered across her jade features. "But if they catch you," Lyall managed a grim smirk. "They won't. I've done crazier stunts before. Just be ready to move." With that, he slipped out from cover, keeping low, and approached a side conduit that fed into the tower's power junction. With a careful manipulation of wires, he triggered a short circuit that caused sparks and an ominous hiss of smoke. Immediately, the sentries rushed over, shouting into their comms about a possible sabotage. Under cover of the commotion, Becca dashed toward the tower's entrance. Heart pounding, she pressed the passkey to the lock, a beep of acceptance. The gate slid open, and she hurried inside. Lyall, from his vantage, breathed a small sigh of relief. But before he could vanish entirely, he felt an acute spike of danger. Turning, he saw two more guards rounding a corner, too close for him to slip away undetected. He was pinned in an alley with no exit. Cursing softly, he cast about for an option. Just as the guards leveled their weapons, ordering him to halt, Lyall held up his hands in feigned surrender. All right, easy there," he said with forced nonchalance. "I'm just a mechanic trying to fix this power junction." "No need for." "Shut it," barked the nearer guard, a tall woman with a cybernetic arm. She eyed him suspiciously. "Let's see your credentials." Lyall patted his pockets, stalling. He sensed a wave of alarm emanating from Becca, who must have felt his predicament through their link. He silently willed her to stay put. If she rushed to help, she'd only expose them both. "I must have dropped them," he lied. "Perhaps in the corridor back there." "If you let me," the guard's partner, a broad-shouldered man with a scar bisecting his brow, snarled. "Enough games!" He lunged forward, grabbing Lyall's arm. Lyall twisted, trying to break free. A blow from the cybernetic limb caught him off guard, slamming him against the tower wall. Pain shot through his ribs. Anger flared in Lyall's chest. He was no fighter, but desperation lent him grit. He jammed his elbow into the guard's midsection, ducking a swing. But a sudden baton crackled with electricity, striking him across the shoulder. White-hot pain flared, and he crumpled, vision sparking at the edges. "You'll come with us," the female guard growled. "We'll find out who you really are." As darkness encroached, Lyall's final thought was of Becca, urging her to remain hidden, to reach Davruel if he could not. When Lyall regained consciousness, he was bound to a metal chair in a dimly lit room. A single overhead lamp cast a harsh glow, illuminating his bruised face and the scuffed floor. His head throbbed, and his wrists ached where restraints bit into his skin. A looming figure stood before him, clad in syndicate regalia, a sleek uniform of dark fabric, emblazoned with the Gilani crest. Pale eyes bored into Lyall's, and a sardonic smile curled the figure's lips. "Good evening," the man said, his voice smooth as oil. "I am Naren, an overseer for the Gilani syndicate. You caused quite a stir at the tower tonight." Lyall flexed his wrists, testing the restraints. I was just—" "You're no mere mechanic," Naren interrupted, stepping closer. "Your credentials are forged. Care to explain why you were tampering with our tower?" Lyall swallowed hard, struggling to maintain composure. His thoughts raced, trying to concoct a plausible story that might lead away from Becca. But Naren's cold gaze suggested that lies would only prolong the inevitable. Before Lyall could form a response, the overseer held up a small device. Pressing a button, agony lanced through Lyall's temple, sudden and merciless. He gasped, nearly blacking out again. When the pain receded, Naren leaned in, his voice dangerously soft. "You have a neural implant of some kind. My scan picked up unusual brainwave activity. Very interesting. Could it be that you are linked to someone else?" Lyall's heart hammered. He realized that the bond with Becca likely registered on certain advanced scanners. He bit down a surge of panic. No. That's... Another jolt of pain ripped through him. This time, it felt like claws scraping inside his skull. The connection to Becca flared in. Response. A hot spike of fear echoing across their bond. He clamped his teeth to stifle a scream, tears springing to his eyes. Naren studied him with a detached curiosity. "So, you do feel that? Remarkable. It's almost like you share your sensations with another. Whoever they are, they must be very close, or connected in a most unusual way." He stepped back, calling out to a subordinate who lingered in the shadows. "Search the tower. Find any sign of an intruder. If he has a partner, they'll be trying to reach the lab." Lyall's mind whirled with terror for Becca. If they caught her, she'd be handed over to the syndicate's clutches. He had to protect her somehow. Summoning what defiance he could muster, he spat at Naren's feet. "I'm just a hired hand, all right. Some smuggler paid me to sabotage your tower. I don't even know who they were. They paid in advance." Naren's lip curled in contempt. "A smuggler, perhaps. But your interest in our exobiologist suggests something more. You have a link to that elusive race we've been seeking, don't you? The jade-skinned survivors." Lyall's blood ran cold. "I don't know anything about that," he stammered, averting his gaze. Another press of the button, and this time the agony was mind-numbing, as if his nerves were on fire. He couldn't hold back a raw, anguished cry. Dimly, he felt Becca's alarm surge through the bond. She was out there, somewhere in the tower or beyond, sensing his torment. He fought to maintain consciousness, to maintain any semblance of resolve. "We'll find her," Naren said calmly, switching off the device. "And when we do, you'll both serve the syndicate's interests. Believe me, we have many uses for such a bond." Waves of pain tremored through Lyall's body, leaving him shaking. He tasted blood on his lip. Yet as he slumped in the chair, eyes drifting shut, a spark of defiance refused to die. The syndicate would have to drag him through the blackest void before he yielded Becca to their hands. For the first time, he realized just how fiercely he had come to care for her, how the bond was no mere inconvenience but a tether that drew them towards something deeper than chance. Even as the edges of his vision darkened once more, he clung to that thought like a lifeline, trusting that Becca would find a way to reach Davruel, that she would not abandon him to the syndicate's cruelty. Whatever they faced, they would face it together, or not at all. Becca crouched behind a pillar in the elevator lobby, her heart pounding in her ears. Through the bond, she had felt Lyall's anguish like a scorching flame. The pain tore at her concentration, threatening to overwhelm her, but she forced herself to remain calm. She had to find Davruel and secure help before the guards discovered her presence. Checking the corridor, she spotted a single guard stationed at a control console for the elevator, which rose and fell through a transparent tube that plunged into the depths of the ocean. By the luminous readouts, it seemed the next trip down was scheduled soon. She had no weapon, no combat experience to speak of, only a fierce determination and a cunning born of necessity. Drawing a shaky breath, Becca closed her eyes, focusing on the bond. She let her awareness expand, feeling Lyall's presence, his pain, his desperation. Gently, she reached out, attempting to soothe him, to give him a measure of solace. Whether he could feel it or not, she did not know. But she clung to the hope that it might ease his torment. Steeling herself, she approached the guard from behind, silent as she could manage. He was engrossed in a datapad. With trembling hands, she grabbed a loose cable lying nearby and, in a moment of wild courage, looped it around the guard's throat. He let out a choked gasp. Dropping the datapad, she pulled with all her might, adrenaline surging through her veins. The guard was stronger, thrashing, elbowing her side. Pain blossomed where he struck, but Becca held fast. Fueled by desperation, stars danced in her vision, and a savage shriek escaped her lips as she fought. At last, the guard went slack, unconscious or near enough. She stumbled back, panting, eyes wide with shock at what she had done. No time for remorse. She scrambled to the console, pressing keys in a frantic attempt to operate the elevator. Alarms began to blare, triggered by the guard's override. Her heart hammered, but after a few tries, the elevator doors slid open. She dashed inside. A swift descent commenced. The cylindrical walls offered a panoramic view of watery depths lit by faint phosphorescence. Strange silhouettes flickered in the gloom, alien sea life twisting through the brine. Before long, a sprawling lab complex came into view, its windows glowing from within like a bioluminescent reef. This had to be Davril's domain. When the elevator docked with the underwater facility, Becca slipped out into a sterile corridor. Rows of reinforced windows revealed labs filled with tanks, specimens, and advanced research equipment. A handful of lab technicians in syndicate uniforms scurried about, occasionally sparing suspicious glances at the newcomer. Trying to project confidence, Becca moved swiftly, scanning the signage in search of Davril. Finally, she found a door labeled with the exobiologist's name, heart pounding. She pressed a hand to the door's panel, which required a passcode. Desperation mounting, she tried the stolen passkey card. To her immense relief, the lock clicked, and the door slid open. Inside, the lab was cluttered with apparatus, vials of fluorescent liquids, half-assembled biotech machinery, stacks of data tablets. Standing over a table was a gaunt man with wild, unkempt hair and eyes that gleamed with manic intensity. He wore a stained lab coat, and as Becca entered, he nearly dropped the sample he was examining. Who are you?" he demanded, voice quavering. "This area is restricted." Becca threw back her hood, revealing her jade skin. "You're Davril, aren't you? I need your help." He froze, eyes widening as he took in her appearance. "By the cosmos, you're of that race." His gaze flitted to her trembling hands, the flush in her cheeks. "Impossible. I thought none survived." "Fascinating. Marvelous. You must let me examine you." She held up a hand, stopping his rush of words. "They're holding my companion. The syndicate is torturing him. We have a bond, a result of an Orana Nebula serum. We need to break it, or at least stop them from exploiting it." Davril's expression went from feverish excitement to wary concern. A bonding serum from the Orana Nebula. Rare, potent, rumored impossible to reverse. You truly have it in your system. She nodded. "Yes. And we're being hunted because of it, because of me. You have to help us, or they'll use us, enslave us, or worse." The exobiologist ran a trembling hand through his hair, pacing. "The syndicate coerces me to develop specialized formulas, but I never expected. I've studied rumors of your species, your unusual genetic markers. If the bond merges with your latent traits, The results could be revolutionary or catastrophic. Becca pressed closer. Can you sever it? Davriel paused, eyes flicking to a console. In theory, I might craft a neutralizing agent, but it would require an intricate sequence of chemical reagents, genetic samples, time, which we may not have, and if the syndicate learns of this, they'll intervene, either to seize control of you or punish me. Becca's determination blazed. Then we must act quickly. My companion is suffering. If we don't move, the syndicate will break him. Davriel hesitated. Conflict etched on his face. Then he seemed to come to a decision. I'll try, but you must protect me from the syndicate's wrath, or none of us will escape this place alive. He began rummaging through shelves and containers, pulling out advanced scanning equipment. I need to run a preliminary analysis of your genetic structure. Step here. Though fear gnawed at her, Becca complied, standing on a circular platform that hummed with scanning frequencies. Data scrolled across the screens. Davriel muttered to himself, fascinated. Yes, yes. Your cells resonate with the bonding serum, forming an unusual synergy with your people's telepathic potential. This is extraordinary. The bond is more than chemical, it's partly psionic, braided into your very genome. Severing it will require targeting both the physical and psychic components simultaneously. She bit her lip, recalling the earlier surge of pain that Lyall endured. Then we do whatever it takes. Just hurry. Suddenly, claxons erupted throughout the lab, and a stern voice crackled on the intercom. Intruder alert in Sector B. Secure all exits. This is not a drill. Becca's breath caught. The guards must have realized she was here, or they captured Lyall. Maybe both. Davriel's eyes darted wildly. We're out of time, he hissed. I'll gather what I can. We'll have to attempt the procedure elsewhere. She helped him shove equipment into a portable case. A sense of urgency pounded in her ears. Through the bond, she felt Lyall's faint consciousness. He was in agony, but alive. Summoning courage, she turned to Davriel. Show me where they might be holding him. Sub-level interrogation cells, Davriel replied, voice quavering. He'll be heavily guarded. Becca squared her shoulders. Then let's go. I won't leave without him. In the sterile corridors below, a tense hush reigned, broken only by the distant echo of booted feet. Becca and Davriel slunk through the shadows, guided by a rough schematic on the scientist's handheld device. Every so often, they glimpsed armed enforcers rushing in response to the alarms. But the chaos of multiple alerts seemed to work in their favor. At last, they arrived at a corridor lined with thick metal doors, each bearing the syndicate's crest. A faint moan drifted from behind one door. Becca's heart clenched. She knew that voice. Lyall. Davriel frowned at the controls. Key code locked. I can override, but it'll trigger an internal alarm. We'll have less than a minute before guards swarm. Becca gripped his arm. Do it. With trembling fingers, Davriel tapped a sequence on the panel. Metal shutters slid back. Inside, Lyall was strapped to a chair, bruised and barely conscious. A tall, cold-eyed figure, the overseer Naren turned sharply, leveling a sidearm at Becca. Shock registered in his gaze when he saw her jade skin, a flash of triumph lighting his features. Well, well, Naren purred. You've saved me the trouble of finding you. Before Becca could react, he fired. Pain erupted in her shoulder as the blast grazed her flesh, sending her reeling. She bit back a cry, staggering against the wall. Davriel ducked behind the doorway with a shout. Naren advanced, weapon aimed. No sudden moves, or I'll finish you both. My employers will be pleased to have the pair. His words died on his lips as Lyall, summoning a last reserve of strength, twisted free of one loosened restraint, and lunged forward, tackling him. The shot that Naren managed to fire went wide, ricocheting off the ceiling. The two men grappled, exchanging blows. Naren was a formidable opponent, quickly overpowering Lyall in his weakened state. He slammed Lyall against the wall, pressing the sidearm to his temple. Becca's heart stuttered, a wave of terror flooding the bond. She fought to steady her trembling limbs. In a desperate move, she seized a fallen baton from the floor and thrust it into Naren's side. The electric discharge crackled, sending him convulsing. He dropped the gun, allowing Lyall to stagger free. Without pausing, Lyall grabbed Becca's hand, and together they lurched out of the cell. Davriel slapped the door controls, sealing Naren inside, though it would not hold him for long. Alarms blared anew, red lights flashing in rhythmic pulses. "Becca," Lyall croaked, relief flooding his battered features. "You came." She looped an arm around him, supporting his weight. "I had to. We found Davriel. He's willing to help." Davriel, panting, emerged from cover. "That man won't be contained for long. We need to leave." Lyall nodded weakly, leaning on both of them. The corridor trembled with the sound of approaching reinforcements. Their only chance was to fight or flee. Gritting her teeth against the throbbing wound in her shoulder, Becca locked eyes with Lyall. For a moment, the bond flared between them, forging an unspoken understanding. If they were to survive, they had to rely on each other mind, body, and whatever gifts Becca's species possessed. Summoning courage, she turned toward the onrushing guards. Time seemed to slow. She felt Lyall's adrenaline surging, his resolve igniting hers. With a cry, she swung the electrified baton, scattering the first guard's aim. Lyall caught another with a swift kick to the knee, sending him sprawling. Davriel clutched his equipment case, ducking behind them as they forced a path down the corridor. Blood pounded in their ears. The glowing tanks and lab windows rushed past in a blur of flickering lights and frantic motion. More. Syndicate enforcers poured in from side passages. In response, Davriel keyed a control panel, sealing blast doors behind them. It wouldn't hold forever, but it bought precious seconds. Finally, they reached a transport dock with a small submersible craft. Davriel explained through ragged breaths that the vessel was designed for aquatic exploration, capable of carrying them up to the surface. They piled in, slamming the hatch shut as fists and gunfire rattled the exterior. "Go!" Becca gasped, pressing a hand to her bleeding shoulder. Davriel engaged the engines, the craft submerging into the ocean waters. Through reinforced glass, they watched luminescent corals drift by as they rose, leaving the lab behind. Lyall slumped in a seat, eyes closed, breath ragged. Becca knelt by him, her own wound throbbing. She felt his pain, his weariness, and the unwavering thread of gratitude he directed at her. You saved me," he murmured, voice hoarse. She managed a tight, pained smile. "We save each other." Davriel kept glancing over his shoulder. "We're not safe yet. Syndicate patrols roam these waters. We must surface on the far side of the city, away from their scanners." As they navigated the undersea realm, an uneasy silence fell. At last, the submersible broke the surface in a secluded lagoon surrounded by craggy outcroppings. They moored at a hidden dock used by smugglers. According to Davriel, distant sirens wailed across the city, growing fainter as they slipped into the shadows. Under the dim glow of the Orelos moon, the trio exited the submersible. Lyall leaned heavily on Becca, each step a testament to his battered state. Davriel clutched his equipment, eyes darting nervously. "Now what?" Lyall rasped once they found temporary cover behind a derelict warehouse. Davriel set the case down, popping it open. "We attempt the severance," I have a partial formulation here. If we inject you both, we might disrupt the bond if not permanently. Then at least enough to mask your connection from syndicate scanners. That may buy time for a full cure, but it's risky, especially in your condition. Becca swallowed. And if we fail, Davriel exhaled, meeting her gaze. The backlash could harm you both, perhaps fatally. Or it might do nothing at all. I can't guarantee success without a proper lab. Lyall sucked in a breath, recalling the searing agony inflicted by Naren's device. His voice steadied as he answered, "We can't remain syndicate targets forever. If we become separated, they'll exploit this bond. We have to try." Sharing a determined look, Becca nodded. "We do it together." As Davriel prepared the syringes, the night air crackled with tension. Becca watched as he extracted glowing liquids, mixing them in a portable centrifuge. She felt Lyall's hand slip into hers, his fingers cool yet reassuring. "Whatever happens," he murmured, "I'm glad we met, even if it was by a questionable beverage choice." A wry laugh escaped her, though tears pricked her eyes. Through the bond, she sensed his sincerity, his admiration, his hope. Whatever cosmic accident had thrust them together, it had led to a bond that was no longer just an inconvenience. It had become something meaningful, a connection that transcended circumstance. Davriel approached with 2 loaded syringes. "On 3, he said, voice taut. "Brace yourselves." They nodded, rolling up their sleeves. The cold sting of the needle entered Becca's arm, mirrored in the subtle flinch she felt from Lyall. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then pain erupted like molten fire coursing through their veins. A shared scream tore from their throats, echoing in the stillness of the lagoon. Stars exploded behind Becca's eyes. She felt as though her mind had been torn open, the bond laid bare in a swirl of colors and memories. She saw glimpses of Lyall's past, his lonely childhood on Terra, his ramshackle dealings among the stars, his hidden yearnings for a place to call home. At the same time, Lyall witnessed fragments of her heritage, the lost cities of her people, the catastrophic blaze that consumed her world, her flight through the galaxy in search of sanctuary. Pain and wonder fused, forging a kaleidoscope of sensation that transcended the physical. She felt Lyall's heartbeat entwined with hers, 2 rhythms blending into one. Amid the maelstrom, a faint voice seemed to echo, "You are not alone. Neither of you is alone." Then, in a sudden rush, the connection snapped like a taut cord severed by a blade. The shock hurled them apart, each collapsing to the ground, dazed and gasping. Becca struggled to sit up, her vision swimming. Lyall lay a few feet away, clutching his chest, eyes wide with disorientation. Davriel crouched beside him, scanning his vitals. "Breathe," the scientist urged. "Focus." Slowly, the roaring in Becca's ears receded. She tried to sense Lyall in her mind, only to find emptiness where once a resonance had dwelled. Panic clenched her heart. Had she lost him? Was the bond truly gone? Or had they destroyed something more precious? "Lyall," she croaked. He turned to her, eyes blinking in confusion. He paused, as though searching for a sound that was no longer there. "I can't feel you anymore." Tears slipped down Becca's cheeks, uncertain if it was relief or sorrow. Then it worked. Davriel exhaled shakily. "My scans indicate the bond's psychic signature has diminished significantly. It may not be entirely eradicated, but at least it's suppressed." Becca's shoulder ached, and her body trembled from the aftershocks of the serum. She should have rejoiced this was what they'd wanted, to break free from the forced union. Yet, an unexpected hollowness settled over her. She wondered if Lyall felt it too. Gently, he reached out, his hand brushing hers. No psychic echo passed between them. only the warmth of physical touch. He offered a small, tentative smile, laced with sadness. "We're free," he whispered, as if testing the words. Davriel wiped sweat from his brow. "We must leave Orellos at once. The syndicate will search every corner for you both. My vessel is small, but I might pilot you to a safer system. We can refine the cure further, see if there's a permanent fix. But if you remain here—" They nodded, struggling to stand. Every muscle protested, but urgency spurred them on. They had severed the bond at least partially and escaped the immediate clutches of the syndicate. Yet their journey was far from over. The specter of Naren loomed, as did the entire Gilani syndicate, eager to harness the secrets of the jade-skinned survivor and her human partner. As they limped toward Davriel's hidden transport, a swirl of conflicting emotions warred within Becca. She sensed Lyall's presence now only through the mundane senses, no psychic tether linking their minds. Free, yes, but also somehow diminished. She recalled that brief glimpse of his memories, feeling his hopes, his fears, his vulnerabilities laid bare. Would they ever share such intimacy again? Or had they irrevocably lost that closeness in their bid for freedom? Still, this was the path they had chosen. She resolved to see it through, to help Lyall heal, and to unravel the mysteries of her own heritage. Perhaps, she thought, in the vastness of space, they could still forge a bond of their own choosing, unburdened by the shackles of a forced serum. Clutching Lyall's arm for support, she looked up at the star-flecked sky of Orellos, the moonlight reflecting off the waves. For the first time since her world fell apart, a spark of genuine hope flickered in her heart. They would overcome the syndicate, outwit the bounty hunters, and perhaps even find the scattered survivors of her people. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape, bound no longer by chemical fate, but by the bonds they chose to forge themselves. Months later, under the dazzling luminance of a distant star, the wayfarer's fortune touched down on a remote frontier world. Beyond the landing pad stretched rolling plains of soft grass, dotted with clusters of alien wildflowers. The sweet scent of blossoms drifted on a gentle breeze, a welcome contrast to the chaos they had endured. Lyall powered down the engines and turned to Becca, who sat in the co-pilot seat. In the time since their escape from Orellos, they had laid low with Davriel, refining the partial cure he had devised. The Gilani syndicate continued to hunt them, but with the bond severed, tracking them became far more difficult. Although the psychic link had dulled, a faint resonance lingered, the barest flicker of empathy that sometimes passed between them. At times, it felt like a half-remembered dream. A gentle reminder that once, their minds had been intertwined. They had learned to speak freely, to share burdens and laughter without the unnatural serum forcing them together. In the quiet moments of interstellar travel, they found a connection that, though more subtle, felt genuine. Becca met Lyall's gaze, a wry smile tugging at her lips. "Ready to see if your contact here can help us stay under the radar?" He nodded. "He owes me a favor, one of many, actually. We'll get new transponder codes, safe passage. We can keep searching for any traces of your people. If there are others out there, hidden from the syndicate, we'll find them." She exhaled, touched by the conviction in his voice. Though the serum had been a curse, it had led her to someone who stood by her, not because an alien potion demanded it, but because he chose to. They stepped onto the dusty soil, making their way toward a modest settlement where Davriel and a handful of sympathetic exiles worked on advanced treatments for the wounded and displaced. The exobiologist greeted them at the entrance with a nod, his once feverish gaze tempered by genuine respect. In the weeks of travel, he had glimpsed a cause worth supporting, helping them stay free from the syndicate's clutches. As the sun set over the horizon, Lyall and Becca found themselves walking a quiet path, the sky ablaze with colors. The wind ruffled their hair, carrying the promise of peace they had seldom known. They paused at the crest of a low hill, watching the alien sun dip below the plains. "You never did tell me what your greatest dream is," Becca said softly, recalling the fragments of Lyall's memories she had once seen. "Now that you're not bound by serum or on the run every second, if you could do anything, go anywhere, what would it be?" Lyall's lips curved into a thoughtful smile. "I used to think I just wanted to wander free, to never be tied down. But after everything that's happened, maybe I dream of a place to return to, a place we can call our own, a home that's chosen, not forced, a place where we don't have to run." He hesitated, reaching out to gently brush a strand of hair from her face. "What about you?" Becca's gaze rested on the horizon. "I want to find any remnants of my kind, if they exist. But more than that, I want to ensure no one else suffers as we have under the syndicate's greed. And I'd like to see if, even without a serum, we can forge a bond that lasts." Warmth kindled in Lyall's eyes. He took her hand in his. "I'd like that. One day, we might discover a world free from syndicate grasp, where we can build something new, together." They stood in companionable silence, the hush of twilight wrapping them in a gentle embrace. Though countless challenges lay ahead, for now they savored a moment of calm. The universe was vast and uncertain, but they had found in each other a steadfast partnership, tested by fire and sealed by choice rather than chemical fate. At length, they returned to the settlement, guided by the glow of lanterns that dotted the path. Each step carried them toward an unwritten future, a future of hope, resistance against tyranny, and the promise of forging their own destinies beneath the endless stars. And though they remained ever watchful for the dark agents of the syndicate, they carried with them a quiet confidence. For in the union of a resourceful human trader and the last daughter of a shattered world, something precious had been born, a shared resolve to claim the freedom and happiness that had once been denied them. Together, they would face every threat, forging a new legend in the cosmic tapestry, one built on loyalty, courage, and the enduring power of two hearts bound not by serum, but by hope. Months later, under the dazzling luminance of a distant star, the wayfarer's fortune touched down on a remote frontier world. Beyond the landing pad stretched rolling plains of soft grass, dotted with clusters of alien wildflowers. The sweet scent of blossoms drifted on a gentle breeze, a welcome contrast to the chaos they had endured. Lyall powered down the engines and turned to Becca, who sat in the co-pilot seat. In the time since their escape from Morello's, they had laid low with Davrul, refining the partial cure he had devised. The Gilani syndicate continued to hunt them, but with the bond severed, tracking them became far more difficult. Although the psychic link had dulled, a faint resonance lingered, the barest flicker of empathy that sometimes passed between them. At times, it felt like a half-remembered dream, a gentle reminder that once their minds had been intertwined. They had learned to speak freely, to share burdens and laughter without the unnatural serum forcing them together. In the quiet moments of interstellar travel, they found a connection that, though more subtle, felt genuine. Becca met Lyall's gaze, a wry smile tugging at her lips. "Ready to see if your contact here can help us stay under the radar?" He nodded. "He owes me a favor, one of many, actually. We'll get new transponder codes, safe passage. We can keep searching for any traces of your people. If there are others out there, hidden from the syndicate, we'll find them." She exhaled, touched by the conviction in his voice. Though the serum had been a curse, it had led her to someone who stood by her. Not because an alien potion demanded it, but because he chose to. They stepped onto the dusty soil, making their way toward a modest settlement where Davriel and a handful of sympathetic exiles worked on advanced treatments for the wounded and displaced. The exobiologist greeted them at the entrance with a nod, his once feverish gaze tempered by genuine respect. In the weeks of travel, he had glimpsed a cause worth supporting, helping them stay free from the syndicate's clutches. As the sun set over the horizon, Lyall and Becca found themselves walking a quiet path, the sky ablaze with colors. The wind ruffled their hair, carrying the promise of peace they had seldom known. They paused at the crest of a low hill, watching the alien sun dip below the plains. "You never did tell me what your greatest dream is," Becca said softly, recalling the fragments of Lyall's memories she had once seen. "Now that you're not bound by serum or on the run every second, if you could do anything, go anywhere, what would it be?" Lyall's lips curved into a thoughtful smile. "I used to think I just wanted to wander free, to never be tied down. But after everything that's happened, maybe I dream of a place to return to, a place we can call our own, a home that's chosen, not forced, a place where we don't have to run." He hesitated, reaching out to gently brush a strand of hair from her face. "What about you?" Becca's gaze rested on the horizon. "I want to find any remnants of my kind, if they exist. But more than that, I want to ensure no one else suffers as we have under the syndicate's greed. And I'd like to see if, even without a serum, we can forge a bond that lasts." Warmth kindled in Lyall's eyes. He took her hand in his. "I'd like that. One day, we might discover a world free from syndicate grasp, where we can build something new, together." They stood in companionable silence, the hush of twilight wrapping them in a gentle embrace, though countless challenges lay ahead. For now they savored a moment of calm. The universe was vast and uncertain, but they had found in each other a steadfast partnership, tested by fire and sealed by choice rather than chemical fate. At length, they returned to the settlement, guided by the glow of lanterns that dotted the path. Each step carried them toward an unwritten future, a future of hope, resistance against tyranny, and the promise of forging their own destinies beneath the endless stars. And though they remained ever watchful for the dark agents of the syndicate, they carried with them a quiet confidence. For in the union of a resourceful human trader and the last daughter of a shattered world, something precious had been born, a shared resolve to claim the freedom and happiness that had once been denied them. Together, they would face every threat, forging a new legend in the cosmic tapestry, one built on loyalty, courage, and the enduring power of two hearts bound not by serum, but by hope.